Namaste. And good morning. I'm happy to have everyone here. If anyone has anything that you would like to share or have addressed with regard to Aham and his teaching or your sadhana, please share it, please bring it up, and we will be happy to be with you in it. As you may know, Bhagavan Ramana used to sit in the old hall and receive devotees, people who would come from all over the world, of course, particularly from India, but in the latter years of his life, many devotees from the West used to come and be with him. And he would be with them in their spiritual work, in their sadhana. And he was always with devotees right where they were. So the questions that they would ask of him, many of which are recorded during certain periods of time you may know already, in 3 different books, in the talks with Ramana Maharshi and Day by Day with Bhagavan, as well as letters from Ramana Ashram. And in other books too, such as Paul Brunton's Conscious Immortality. Brunton's book is primarily questions that he himself asked Bhagavan. And you may be aware that a Ganeshan, who is Bhagavan Ramana's grandnephew, one of his grandnephews, who also gives Satsang at his home, and who is every Wednesday afternoon giving talks on the old devotees of Bhagavan. His series is called The Rocks and Boulders of Arunachala, which Ganeshan is likening the old devotees to aspects of Arunachala, those who have passed on and re-merged with Arunachala. But as Bhagavan used to sit in his old hall and take questions from devotees and receive their sharings, he really didn't, or usually did not, have anything particular to say in the way of talking, other than in the context of answering questions or being with people where they were and what was going on with them in their spiritual practice. In a similar way, that's basically what I do. It just comes to me to share what has been revealed to me as, you might say, the way things are, how they work, how the manifestation is sustained and maintained in this apparent world of duality, how it comes about, how it's maintained by those of us who are identified with the body and the mind and with the events that are occurring in what we call this world, but particularly the events as in main interest to those events that you would have occurring in your life. We all are primarily interested in our own set of events and circumstances, what is occurring to us. Everything that it happens, we look and see what its reference is to us, how it affects us as a seeming individual. Now, the paradox of it is that there is not now, nor has there ever been, nor will there ever be, in truth, an individual being. That is only an appearance. It appears to be that way because we, who are identified with our bodies and mind, the mind being the sustainer of the body and the creator of the circumstances and events that are pertaining to the body, the maintainer of the apparent, the history of the apparent being that we think ourselves to be, in conjunction with the fact that we have a body and are identified with the body as though the body is us. It just so happens that it's the one universal awareness, the one divine substance expressing through, as and through each of what appears to be us, and maintaining what appears to be us by means of what is expressing as our seeming individuality, held together again by mind. A number of years ago, the mother of my son, her mother, which of course technically I guess you'd say was my mother-in-law, had a gentleman friend, and this gentleman friend professionally was, in America, a chef. He was very talented and very skilled, and one of his specialties was to create ice carvings that he would put in the dining hall of the place that he worked. And he would make different ice carvings. He would take huge rock ice and form out of this rock ice various statues. He was very, very talented in this regard. At one time, we as a group of family went to where he was entering. He had entered one of his carvings in a contest where there were those who did this ice sculpturing. And there must have been 20 or 30, or there, I can't remember, but at least that many, of these ice carvings in this place. And it was very cool there, of course, from the ice, but they were keeping it cool. The air conditioning was exceptionally cool and kind of cold. You had to wear a wrap because it was cold. And all of these different formations of the entries of all of the various ice carvings. Can you get the picture? You get the idea? If you've ever seen an ice carving, some of them are, when they're know what they're doing, are quite good. And there were houses and castles and porpoises and seagulls and eagles and people and children, all kinds of ice carvings, all formed, you see, for this occasion, and only had a limited existence. For it was only for this occasion. And of course, not too long later, they all returned to that out of which they were fashioned and formed. Simply the water. Well, look at that. Here all of us are sitting here. In a manner of speaking, we're all just formed and fashioned out of that same substance, universal consciousness, universal being. Different sizes, different shapes, etc. And all of us will eventually return, just like the ice carvings, to this very essence out of which we are fashioned. The mind is that which fashions and holds together this body with which we are identified and considering ourselves to be. Now, if we could imagine those ice carvings being put into cold water and then those that would say porpoises or fish, and there were those kind, fish and porpoises, swimming off. Well, we kind of swim off. We move about in this universal substance out of which we're fashioned, and we don't usually recognize, we don't see that this consciousness out of which we're fashioned and formed by the mind is a neutral expression in the very space itself that is filled also with consciousness. If we don't have the spiritual sight to see, if we can't, let's put it the other way around, if we did have the spiritual sight to see, there can be the occasions in which we can actually see that the very space itself is itself formed as a neutral expression of the consciousness, the universal consciousness, out of which everything else is formed as a physical manifestation. You see, the truth is there's nothing but consciousness. Everything is consciousness. It's not consciousness and whatever else is appearing. Everything that is appearing is consciousness appearing as that which is appearing. And we are the consciousness.
we may stay for a period of time identified with the manifested appearance of a physical entity and believe that this physical entity, this body expression, is who and what we are. Well, that's who and what we appear to be. And even the history that pertains to this body, which is actually the mind, the record of experiences that have occurred to this body from the time it came into manifestation as an infant, a baby, and all of the experiences that it has undergone, the body, and all of the events as it grew that have been recorded in the brain and central nervous system of the body, all of which we've taken to mean me. But the truth of the matter is, that's just who we think we are. That's just mind. That's not who we are. Now the big question may be, and in my view is, which is the most important? To be caught up and identified with the form that we appear to be, living from the basis of the mind and all of the events that we are identified with that appear to be our life, and the resulting identification with that, the nature of which is suffering. It's also pleasure, sure. But all of the trials and tribulations, all of the difficulties, all of the seeming limitations, all of the desires, unfulfilled as well as fulfilled, and the pursuit of the desires for more and better and different experiences in what we call life, and our joy when we achieve, and our disappointment when we're unable to achieve, all of that we call the drama of the experiences that we undergo. And that in itself is just called life. Now the fact is, as long as we're identified with this being that we think we are, and all of the dramas that this being is involved in, and living at the effect of, whether we recognize it, where everyone recognizes it or not, and to what extent we're able to deeply ourselves recognize it, it's not always pleasant. There is there is a lot of pleasure in it. But when you have pleasure mixed with displeasure, could you call that pleasure? Well, it's according to whether you are just holding on to the pleasure and attempting to avoid the displeasure, then we can call it pleasure. But pleasure, in my view, mixed with displeasure is displeasure. Just see it. You can say, well, you're being pessimistic. I'm a little more optimistic than you are. In my view, the main thing is to recognize that this self that we are meditating as an entity living in time and space, and that in fact is what's happening, consciousness is meditating the notion of being an individual living in what appears to be time and space. And as long as identification with that is occurring, there's the forgetfulness of the actual being, the pure consciousness itself that is actually meditating this body-mind configuration and identified with it. But when there's the awakening to this whole scenario and the insight and the seeing is occurring as to the true nature of the being that we are, which is this universal awareness, in which all of this is appearing to occur, and we're not identified with the form of things, but fully cognizant from and as the formless awareness of things, remaining in the formless awareness of things as the formless awareness, then it doesn't matter what the configuration of the form of the things happens to be. We're not affected by it. And that is what's called enlightenment. To me, and shared by Bhagavan Ramana, and shared before him by Buddha, and shared by Jesus Christ and a number of Gnanis, enlightened ones, the great beings in history, that's the most important realization for us to have. That awakening to the true nature of the being that we are, which is faceless, formless, timeless, spaceless being, awareness itself. No longer caught in this dream of mortality. I was sharing with Elizabeth this morning. I have mentioned it before. I have not emphasized the point, but I'll make the point now. What happens when it comes time to drop the body? Where does this so-called being that is living in time and space, identified with the body and the mind, and with its history of a being, what happens to it when it's time to finally drop the body? Some people say, well, no one knows. I think we know. What's been revealed to me, I think, is authentic. Where do you go and what happens when you go to sleep? If your sleep is dreamless, there's just being itself, that's all. There's being in which there's a darkness, in which consciousness is simply aware of the darkness, in the timeless, spaceless, faceless, formless awareness, yet it's darkness. We're there. Someone says, what happened to you? Where have you been? I've been asleep. You were asleep? Well, you must have been there. You say, I had a good sleep and nothing was happening. It was just me there. But what if you had a dream? Then according to the nature of the dream is the nature of the events that you are having. But when you drop the body, I hope for your sake that you can have nice dreams. Because that's like it is. The The nature of the dream that you're having is the nature of the event that you will be experiencing. Now, have you been able to bring your awareness into a fine-tuned focus, which is what inquiry does, or methods of meditation if you become very, I guess you'd say, affluent in those methods, capable in those methods, or in your inquiry itself? Can you withdraw your attention into the source of attention itself, in the pure awareness of being? So like when we're sitting in meditation, you withdraw attention into the fullness of pure being, and you're more or less like floating in this timeless, spaceless, faceless, formless awareness that is bliss. You see, this bliss is infinite and eternal, without beginning and without ending, when we recognize it, recognize it, and abide in it as it. And you see, when we're in that bliss, in this very bliss of being, there is no time, so we're not concerned about how long we are in it. Have you ever had those kind of, call it meditations, or those that abidance in the stillness of being as the result of your inquiry or meditation, in which you're there with your eyes closed? You don't know anything about what's going on or the time that has passed, and then you open your eyes, and my goodness, you had set aside a particular period in which you were going to meditate, and look how fast it went. My goodness, I didn't realize that the time is over, because it was timeless. There was no time there. When you're capable of that, and you're able to withdraw attention into that, when it is time to drop the body, that's the time to be very alert and withdraw attention into this pure awareness of being. When you have developed the ability to do that, and then drop the body, and bliss is what you are henceforth, evermore. You say, well, will I take on another body? Well, that's according to the destiny of what you have set in motion. If it's prominent and predominant in your being, then you may. If it's not predominant in your being, you may have completed and you've merged with a universal awareness. So how do you feel about that? So can you recognize this pure awareness and be in this pure awareness to such an extent that you're so at one with it, as it, that it really makes no difference? You see, it would be like one of these ice carvings. It's just merged with the substance out of which it was fashioned and formed. Nothing actually was gained and nothing was lost as far as the pure H2O, or the water itself, out of which it was fashioned. From the perspective of the water, nothing was gained and nothing was lost. There was an interval in which it was fashioned and formed as ice, and to those onlooking, it might have been a nice or beautiful carving, but as far as the water was concerned, it could care less. this, if you went off to sleep into the dreamless awareness of being and the dreamless pure self, it wouldn't matter how long you're there. It doesn't matter. Nothing lost, nothing gained. Nothing gained, nothing lost. When we're in dreamless sleep, and are we not enjoying it? Dreamless sleep? And so if we were living, so to speak, and that's just a word, that's probably an incorrect word, if we were abiding in and as and from the dreamless sleep, which is timeless, spaceless awareness. Now we can't, from the mind's point of view, grasp what timeless, spaceless being is, because it's not in the mind. So the mind can't grasp it. It's prior to the mind. And there's no way that the mind can grasp that which is prior to it. For that is what the mind is, out of that the mind rises. So the mind cannot grasp that, just like the eyes cannot see themselves, or the finger cannot point to itself. So there's no way that the mind can know that. But when the mind subsides, we are that. All that can really be said about that is just words that point to that, such as Sat Chidananda, see, which are pointers to that quality: pure existence, pure consciousness, pure bliss. What's significant is abide as it. Be it right now as thoughtless being. And you see it here in Aham. What we place emphasis on is having the experience and being the experience of this quality. Being the experience of this quality, not talking about it. Yes, all that I'm saying is a talking about it, but please, don't take what I'm saying and create another system of beliefs. Use the words that are being used as pointers to have this as your own in the instant, in the moment. Be the feeling of it. Be the knowing of it. Not as an I that is feeling it, not as an I that is knowing it, that's the mind. But that which is prior to the I, that pure knowing, that pure seeing, the pure I am is even before the thought I am is given rise. I am in its purity is not a thought. It is the being that we are. So the I am itself is only a pointer. The I am as a thought, as an indicator, as a reference point in consciousness or in the mind, is nothing but a pointer to the quality of being that is the pure I am. When we withdraw more and more into this purity of I am, so that attention itself is returning to that out of which attention is appearing, all that we are is this pure I am. And this pure being that is I am, that we are, is prior to everything. Again, these are words pointing to it, but in the being is what counts. So that there's no I over, no I left over. Some teachers might refer to it just as the pure I, or the mind as the pure I, and give reference to the fact that the mind itself cannot know itself. The mind cannot know itself. For the mind has been given rise out of that which is prior to it. It's like a flashlight can flash a torch, a hand torch. In America, we call them a flashlight. The hand torch can shine on everything, shine its light on everything, but it can't shine its light on its own light. In exactly the same manner. Yes, this is what I'm referring to, see? We can shine the light, I can shine it in your eyes, but the light can't shine on itself. Likewise, the I am can light up. The I, as an originating quality of consciousness in the mind, a reference point, can then give reference to everything that it's capable of lighting up, and everything has reference to this I. Every thought, every object, everything has reference to the I. It cannot even be cognized without the I first being present as the cognizer, as the perceiver, but it cannot perceive itself. And this is the awareness that we are. We can withdraw into this awareness and be this awareness that we are. And we can actually be the knowing of this awareness that we are, but we cannot know this awareness that we are. Make that distinction, it's very important. In being the knowing and knowing. Be the knowing. Let go into the knowing and be the knowing. Totally surrender into the knowing and be the knowing. And this is home. This is the home page on the website. Are you with me? So here at Aham, this is what is constantly emphasized. I realize that sometimes there are those that are more into what can I know and understand about me, still living in the world, and caught in the search, and still be able to stay a me, involved in the search, and have better experiences, better circumstances, better events in my life in my world, with the apparent persons, places, and things appearing in my life and in my world, and the emphasis still being on this me that does seem to be an entity apart from all other apparent entities and apart from the sourcing essence, and considering it in the context of one day being able to realize this allness of being. But you see, that's giving rise to and sustaining and maintaining this false notion that there is an I, a me, a separate one, that does actually, in fact, live apart from, different from, this allness of being. There is no such one. If there still wants to be such a one, then of course the body-mind identified with, and particularly the mind itself, will continue to give rise to the notion that there is such a one, sustain and maintain that notion, and defend that notion through what appears to be even millions of lifetimes. Well, that could be what you would call, from one who is abiding in the pure awareness of being as the pure awareness, such as Bhagavan. And I have to join him here in this consciousness. That would be millions of lifetimes of suffering. So we can say, I love to suffer. You say, well, you can take the other point of view. I love to have the experiences. I love the adventures. Okay, that's all right too, for those who love the adventures. But understand one thing. In every drama, which is, you might call an adventure also has intrigue. Mountain climbers love mountain climbing. I don't, but mountain climbers do, and I certainly support a mountain climber loving mountain climbing. You understand? But there's great danger. So there are those who love the danger. In every drama, you see, there are those who I love movies that have drama. Don't we all? In every drama, there's always a villain. Always a villain.
Bad guy.
I'm sorry?
Just a little translation, a bad guy.
Yes, a bad guy. So you see, in order to have the drama, you can call it God playing hide and seek. We are God playing hide and seek. We're God enjoying the dramas, God enjoying the adventures. And if we want to have the adventure, if we want to have the drama, we have to deal with the villains. It's just the way it works. If we want to have the adventure, we have to deal with the danger. It's just the way it works. It's nothing wrong. It's nothing bad. It's like going to amusement parks. In America, they have these huge amusement parks. Disney World. Do they have one in Europe now? I think they do. Do they not?
Yes, in Paris.
Yes. So we go to these Disney World amusement parks where there's all the rides and all the dramas and all the house of mysteries and the house of horrors. Does everyone know what I'm talking about? Well, let's say you go with a small child. I've done this. You go with a child, and they want to see it everything. They want to go on all the shows, all the rides, all of the dramas, houses of mystery, houses of horror. And so you go and you see them all, and I'm a little older than my child. Pretty soon my feet get tired. Pretty soon my body gets tired. Pretty soon I'm ready to go home. But no, let's go one more. There's some more we haven't seen yet. Are you with me? I'm ready to go home. So you see, enlightenment comes for those of us who are ready, which those of us, you might say, who are ready to go home. It comes to those of us who've reached that place in our adventure of one lifetime after another, to where we've reached the place where finally we look and see and tell ourselves the truth. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. You say, well, I'm not sick and tired yet of being sick and tired. I mean, I still got some energy left. I mean, I'm not tired yet, but I'd still like to have the enlightenment. Well, that could happen. And so, it could happen. In other words, you could win. I don't know what they have in Europe, but in America they have lotteries. I think they have the Irish sweepstakes. That's still a lottery? I don't know, is it? So you could win that. You could win the lottery, but what's the chances? Wonder what the odds are of winning the lottery. You could win it, you see. So if you're not actually working to withdraw your attention from the source, into the source, out of the mind, dropping identification with body-mind, and withdrawing attention into the source, if you're not into that place yet, if you've not yet come to that place where you're really into awakening to the dream and recognizing that this dream can be a house of horrors, yes, it can be a house of a love tunnel. But watch out you don't fall out of the love boat. Are we getting the point?
Yes. Yeah.
Here at Aham, we are sharing how to awaken to the dream and be free of the dream of birth and death, so that you will live in the pure awareness of being, as the pure awareness of being, and allow the karma that has been set in motion, which is the conditioned patterns of the mind, to complete themselves on the body in this lifetime. In this lifetime. That's it. It seems that there are not that many people that are ready for that. It was that way also in the time of Bhagavan. Because you see, as this started, as I was sharing, as this sharing started, I was saying Bhagavan used to sit in the old hall and receive devotees. All of us here, in all probability, I would doubt that there's not anyone in this room that has not already visited the old hall at Ramana Ashram. Now, I don't want to disappoint anybody. Now, the old hall that is at Ramana Ashram is a replica of the old hall that Bhagavan sat in. You see, the time came that the termites and whatever was eating away at the, and so it was rebuilt. But certainly was rebuilt exactly like it was as a replica. So it's not actually the old hall, it's just like the ice carvings. They emerge, merged with the source out of which they came. Even Bhagavan's old hall, just like Bhagavan, merged with into the source, to the substance out of which it came. Now, some of it was kept intact, such as the floor tiles. Not all of those are the original. Some of those are also there. I'm not meaning to disappoint anybody. It's just me bringing up facts. Say, Ramana, I wish you wouldn't bring up all the facts. But that's what my function, you might say, is since lightning struck me. Are you with it? Now, when Bhagavan was sitting in the old hall, as the old hall appeared in those days, just like the replica of it today appears, you know, there was only a handful of people sitting around most of the time with Bhagavan when he was there sharing the highest and purest truth that is available to man. Only a handful. In comparison to other nanis and other places and other locations that drew hundreds, even thousands of people constantly. You see, it boils down to how many people are truly ready for the highest truth that Bhagavan has to share. And here in Aham, what we have to share is the highest truth that Bhagavan had to share. It's kind of interesting that we are the first one in Tiruvannamalai in current times to start giving satsangs outside of the ashram because they do not allow satsangs in the ashram. I happen to be the first one. And I have to say, unfortunately at the time, the ashram did not even like it. But Krisha, sitting right over there, was the one that arranged the first location outside of the ashram for me to hold satsangs. Is that correct? She's in the silence, so all she can do is nod her head. But that's true. I have a dear friend here who I've known ever since the first time I came to Tiruvannamalai, who lives here. His home is here. I was talking with him on the telephone a couple of days ago. He said that the last count there was 18 giving satsangs in Tiruvannamalai at this time. I mean, there's a smorgasbord of satsangs in Tiruvannamalai, which is wonderful. And it's, you might say, the culmination of a dream that my very close and dear friend Ganeshan had, that he shared with me a number of years ago when he was talking about how happy he was that Aham had an ashram here. He was happy that we were here, that we were sharing the pure teaching of Bhagavan Ramana. And his vision was that one day the Tiruvannamalai would be filled with ashrams teaching the pure teaching of Bhagavan Ramana. Now, I can't speak for all of the teachers. I know that some are teaching the teaching of Bhagavan. I don't know about all of them, and I'm not saying that in anything other than just saying. I've got to be careful about that, because I've been warned. Ooh, I've got myself in all kinds of trouble. But here, we will always, as far as this one is concerned, as long as this one is in a body, this body is still alive with this being that is in it, that I am, that what we will be sharing is the pure teaching of Bhagavan, as Bhagavan himself shared it. Primarily the inquiry. If we use this inquiry process that is so simple and so profound, so auspicious, we can melt this ice carving that we are very graciously and easily, and merge with this allness of being, out of which we appear to be fashioned and formed. Right now, in this instant, in this moment, let go of any sense of I. Notice for yourself that the sense of I is identified with the body. In a manner of speaking, you can say the entire body mind is the sense of I. And if you're very sensitive to this sense of I that is the body mind, you will feel and know and recognize that it is a contraction on the field and ground of being. This so-called reference point in universal consciousness is itself a contraction in the universal consciousness. And it sustains the notion of being an individual, apart from and separate from the allness of being. And as long as that sense of being an individual, an entity, a me, a person, this person also has within it a sense of other, and this sense of other holds this me in contradistinction from all others, and there will always be a certain degree of doubt, uncertainty about the motive of every other. Is that other being supportive? Is it friend or foe? Is it dependable or not? We will never always know with every other, because you see, in this duality, in this drama, there's always a villain. So is this with the villain or not? Simply see it without judgment. That's the way it is. And if we're fortunate, we can surround ourselves with others that are friends. Is that not what we do? We surround ourselves with others that are friends, and in defense against those others which are foes. And that's what we call life, the drama. Just see it, but this awareness that we are, that is prior to it, has no contraction in it, has no otherness in it. It is the allness of being. It is freedom, peace, joy. It is happiness itself. Abide in it this moment and forever, and be happy. Namaste.
Namaste.